Okay, great. All right, well, I'm going to get started because there's a lot to cover and we will be here for about an hour. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to be here today. We are going to be talking about how to inspire change in hospitality. This is an advocacy and outreach training for plant-based treaty campaigners and anyone who wants to get started with campaigning for the plant-based treaty and really advocating for change within cafes, restaurants, hotels, any food service businesses in your community. I'm Meredith Marin. I'm the founder of a company called Vegan Hospitality, and we work with restaurants, hotels, event centers to help them become vegan friendly. I've been consulting since 2017. In 2019, I started the Vegan Hospitality Consultant Training Program, and I train, mentor, and manage a network of vegan consultants around the world to push for this mission of making the vegan lifestyle accessible and acceptable within the hospitality industry. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some tips and tricks with you today. I know so many of you have already been doing such great work. I've been following the plant-based treaty Slack and seeing some of the work you've all been doing with getting endorsements and getting cafes to make changes. So I'm very inspired by you. And I hope at the least what I can do today for you is just keep you inspired to keep going with it. And at the best, hopefully I can provide some new tools for you to integrate into your advocacy and outreach. Okay, great. I see everyone introducing themselves. Awesome. All right, so let's continue. And I am going to drop a link in the chat for my consultant training program, which I will mention just in the last slide, but in case anyone wants to bookmark this to check out later after today's training, if you want further mentorship from me on this, that's how you can access me. All right, what are we going to cover today? So we're going to talk about my experience working in my community and my journey from customer to consultant. I live in a Caribbean island called Aruba, although as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from New York. And I worked to make Aruba the most vegan-friendly Caribbean island. It took about 2 years to get that status, and I'll share more about what that means. Then I'm going to share my top tips for customer advocacy. As a customer, we have a lot of power, and sometimes we don't utilize that power to our best ability. So we're going to talk about ways to raise the demand for vegan options in your community, how to communicate purposefully, and how to get a decent meal wherever you go, because sometimes it can feel like we're paying for food that just really isn't very good. And we want to go in and support these cafes or restaurants, but we're really unhappy with what they're providing for us. And that can be a barrier to us continuing to go out and support them. So we'll talk through that. Then we're going to get into some specific tools, some strategies for understanding how to define your mission, your vision, and your values, and actually communicate that to the potential cafes, restaurants that you want to help influence. And what is the difference between all these terms, and what's the meaning of it? Why do we need to be able to communicate this? And we are also going to go through a tool called motivational interviewing, which is going to help you build the language to have more conversations that are going to push for change. And finally, like I said on the last slide, I'll just talk about vegan hospitality consulting so you can understand what I do and what the consultants in our network do. I know it's a lot. We're going to do our best to cover everything within the hour. So understanding my journey, how did I get here? I started out, just like everyone starts out, as a customer eating out and really having a lot of frustrating experiences eating out as a vegan. I've had a long vegan journey. I started about 20 years ago as a vegetarian and over time transitioned to being vegan. And I've had a lot of experiences being served pasta marinara everywhere I go, and really not having the servers and the chefs and the managers understand what it means to serve a proper plant-based meal. So I had a lot of experience starting out just trying to communicate my own needs. And the consultant journey started when I moved from New York City to Aruba in 2016. I was in a new community, and a community that really didn't have awareness about what veganism was, or even the terms plant-based. It was a lot of confusion with gluten-free. And I found that I had to be extremely vocal about my needs in order to get a proper meal at a restaurant. I was going out to eat a lot. So there's a sense of privilege there in that I had this privilege to go out to eat a lot because I had moved to a new place, a vacation destination, and a lot of people were visiting me. And so my dad would come and be like, book restaurants for the week for us to go eat at. And no one had vegan options. So I started having to really speak up for myself. And I started doing that by calling restaurants in advance and announcing that I was coming and letting them know I'm vegan, I need a vegan meal. What are you going to make me? And through that, I started to kind of unofficially consult for chefs, because I would have to ask to speak to the chef on the phone, because no one who answered the phone knew what vegan was. So I would speak to the chef and they would say, what can I make for you? And I would explain, I need more than just a couple of grilled vegetables. Okay, where can I find tofu? And I started having to explain where to buy the food, how to cook it, and how to make it taste delicious for me to enjoy it. So that's how my journey started. And I simultaneously started a social media community called Vegan Aruba to share my journey, to show that it is possible to be vegan in a place where there wasn't a lot of awareness, where we didn't have specialty products at supermarkets. In 2016, we had tofu and soy milk, and that was it. There were no vegan meats, vegan cheeses. There wasn't really anything special. So I was showcasing that this is how I eat, and this is how it's possible to eat this way. And I started to build a community. I started to gain momentum with the movement just by sharing my lifestyle and sharing the resources that I was finding in the community. And through that, I started leading workshops, helping people transition to veganism, and really just saying yes to every opportunity that came my way to help the community. I got an opportunity to give a speech at Aruba's National Restaurant Association, and that's where I started to communicate with chefs on a larger level. So beyond just the individual interactions at restaurants, I had already built relationships with so many chefs that when I stepped into that room to give that speech, I recognized a lot of people in the audience. And I gave a talk about the difference between vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free, encouraging restaurants to label their menus, encouraging them to add more plant-based options, and to really tap into this opportunity that they were missing out on. And after this presentation, I had a line of people waiting for me to help them. And I didn't present as a consultant. I presented as a customer, as a community advocate, just like many of you are, and saying, look, you need to do this. This is your responsibility to your consumers. You need to be honest about your menu labels. We can't have mislabeled items. These are the things that vegan customers are expecting at your restaurant. And I had one restaurant owner who handed me his business card at the end, and he said, look, if you don't do this, if you don't help us, we don't know what to do. We can't do it ourselves. My chefs have never worked with tofu. They've never tasted tofu. We have no idea how to make Cuban food vegan. And I said, well, I don't either, but I'm willing to learn. So I went and started consulting for him, and one thing led to the next. And then I called all those people in the line who had given me their business cards. And that was back when I started my first consulting business. Fast forward to being asked to give speeches all over the place to training hospitality associations. And then in 2019, I started to train other vegans to do this work in their community, because people were coming to Aruba, seeing what had happened here, and wanting to go home to their communities and make that change as well. So I started the consultant training program to do just that and to expand the mission. And since then, I've trained over 100 vegans in about 25 countries to do this work. We are a wonderful network of people that are learning from each other continuously. It's not easy work. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur in general, and it's not easy, as you all know, to get people bought into this mission. So we are continuously learning. I learned from all of you as well. And I'm going to teach you some of the things today that I have learned over the years. My most recent achievement through vegan hospitality is being invited to represent vegan hospitality at the World Sustainable Hospitality Alliance Summit coming up at the end of October. I'm very excited about that. And I will also be attending the American Hotel and Lodging Association to represent vegan hospitality there at their conference at the end of October. So we are now starting conversations with larger corporations to do this work at a much wider scale. So what can you do as a customer and an advocate? Because I think that's what many of you started as. And of course, many of you are also campaigners, and we're going to get there as well. But simply just as a customer, what everyone can do beyond wanting to eat good food, we want to really go in there thinking about what our goals are. Our goals as a customer, anytime we are shopping at a cafe or a restaurant or a hotel, let the restaurant know that there is a demand for plant-based options. So by being there, we are creating a demand, but we need to let them know there's a demand. So they may not even notice that we're ordering a plant-based option. If we're going in and being like, I'd like the pizza without the cheese, they may not register that anywhere, that is a vegan option. The server may not tell the manager, the chef may just assume you have an allergy. We need to actually communicate that there is a demand for this. And through that communication, we also want to educate everyone at this establishment. What does it mean to have a plant-based ingredient? What does it mean to live a vegan lifestyle? And what do these customers expect from their experience? So not just a a plain tofu uncooked, right? Or a grilled veggie platter, but what are we actually expecting? And what's going to be appealing for customers to actually want to order more plant-based items? So we need to consider ourselves as educators as well, in addition to customers. And finally, we want to be change agents. So in addition to showcasing there's demand as a customer by communicating to educating, we also need to inspire. I know it's a lot of work. You're all amazing. It's not easy work, but we need to inspire, and we need to particularly inspire the decision makers. That means we actually have to find out who is the decision maker at this establishment and work to inspire them with a positive experience with us. So we always need to approach this from a positive, encouraging angle. We need them to have a good experience with us so that they feel inspired to learn more. And that's what many of you are already doing by introducing sustainability information, talking about climate change, getting them excited. And we don't just want to talk about the negative things and the scary things. We want to also talk about the potential. Why would they want to serve more plant-based options? Why would they want to open up their cafe or restaurant to more guests? Why would they want to get rid of a plant-based milk surcharge? What would be the incentive for them? So we need to think about the potential that we can inspire them so they can get really excited about this too. So how do we do this? Well, I'm going to share 3 tips in order to get started with this and really focusing on these goals as a consumer and an advocate. Number 1, I shared that I used this strategy. It was very effective. Call the restaurants in advance. What this does, number 1, is it starts building the relationship before you step in the door. Many of you know all of this is about relationship building. People need to know you, trust you, like you before they're going to be influenced by you. So think about all the people you're influenced by on the internet. It's not a random stranger. It's someone you've maybe followed for a little while. You trust them for some reason, and you start to get to know them and their values. So we need to start building relationships before we expect people to listen to us or to change their business or change their life based on something that we've said. So what you can do to start is call restaurants in advance, or you can also communicate with them on email or on social media in advance. But call restaurants. And if you've done this before, share with me in the chat. I'd love to know if you've called restaurants in advance of going there, if you've let them know that you are vegan and you're expecting a vegan meal, especially if it's a restaurant that doesn't have anything on their menu, or if their menu is not clearly labeled. Maybe you think they have vegan options, but the labels are kind of confusing. So you can call them and say, I'm going to be stopping by for dinner tonight with my family, and I just wanted to double check, what is it on your menu that is vegan? Can you walk me through that? And if you're not getting clear responses from the person on the phone, ask to speak with the chef. And if the chef isn't available, ask to leave your number. Ask for a call back from the chef. That's how you can start building a relationship with the chef. So the chef can call you back and you can ask, okay, if you don't have vegan options on your menu, what could you serve me? What would you cook for me? And let them describe to you what they have in their kitchen. And if it doesn't sound sufficient for you to make a meal, give a suggestion. Say, well, what about vegan proteins? Have you considered maybe some beans, legumes, tofu? Do you have access to any of that? I would love to leave feeling satisfied and give your restaurant a 5-star review. So we really want to push for a quality experience, and chefs may not know, depending on where in the world you are and what the awareness level is of veganism or plant-based ingredients. They just simply may not know what you mean when you're asking for this kind of food. So we want to give them the opportunity, set them up for success so that when you show up there, they're not scrambling to make something last minute that just isn't going to be exciting. Give them a chance to think about it. Give them a day or 2 in advance to think, I have this chance to be creative. I want to satisfy this customer, and give them the benefit of the doubt that they truly want to serve you, that they do have these hospitality values. Once I started thinking of chefs as people that wanted to serve me, that wanted to help, that relationship became a lot easier. Because if you think about any relationship, if you're giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, if you are expecting the best from them, you're going to see the best get brought out in them. We need to do that for the chefs as well. So you give them a chance, and then you show up and you have a meal, and maybe they have made a custom meal for you that isn't on their menu. That's an amazing opportunity. We don't want that interaction to end there when you finish the food. What we want you to do is then ask to speak to the chef. So ask the server, hey, I'd love to thank the chef for providing this meal for me. Can they come out of the kitchen for a moment so I can have a conversation with them? And let the chef come out and thank the chef for providing this food for you. Take a picture with the chef. Ask for the chef's social media information so you can then bring this conversation to a wider audience. Post about it online and ask for people to comment, hey, have you ever eaten at this restaurant? If this dish was on their menu, would you go there and order it? And share it with the Plant-Based Trading Network. Let us go, share the link, let us go and comment. Yes, we'd love to see that on the menu. We'd love to eat there if there was a vegan option. So use your network, use your community to be advocating for change. And every time you have a positive interaction, think, how can I take this to the next level? How can I involve the chef? Tag the chef, follow up with the chef. Hey, did you notice 10 people commented on my post? What do you think about that? Call the restaurant back and say, last week I ate there. It was so great. We had a great experience. The community wants to see more. Have you thought about adding this dish to your menu? So really trying to use any little win you can to blow it up into something a bit bigger. Number 2, what if the food isn't good? What if they make you a meal and it's terrible? I'm sure this has happened to many of you. You can write in the chat if it has. I'm sure you've ordered food that you were hoping would be a good vegan option, and it turned out it wasn't. So what do we do in that situation? Well, many of you have probably felt really awkward in that situation where someone's asked you, how was the food? And you're just like, oh, it was fine, thank you. And you never show up again. What happens when we're not honest about how the food is, especially if it's a negative experience, is that they never have a chance to learn that what they provided was insufficient. And when they don't have a chance to get that information, they're going to keep doing that. They're going to keep providing insufficient vegan options for customers, and then vegan customers aren't going to return. Eventually, they'll get bad reviews from vegan customers, and they'll decide that vegan customers aren't worth serving. So what we really need to do, if we can get our energy, our strength, our courage, is to be honest. Okay, we need to be honest. Now, we can do it in a really nice way. What we want to do is focus on the potential, not on the negative experience. So we want to focus on what we were expecting as a vegan customer so we can educate them on how to do better, not really solicit an apology from them. We don't want them to be apologetic and say, I'm so sorry, we screwed up, like next time we'll do better. No, we want to have them express gratitude for our taking the time to give them positive feedback. So what we can say, for example, I see someone in the chat wrote veggie rice with 5% vegetables and the rest is rice. So let's use that as an example. So let's say you ordered a veggie fried rice and it was basically just rice with a couple of frozen carrots and peas in it. So what we want to say is, the waiter says, how was the veggie rice? And you say, to be honest, I was expecting to have some more vegetables in it. I was also expecting to maybe see some chopped up, I don't know, soy marinated tofu, or to have some lentils or legumes or something that would help me feel satisfied because I'm leaving a little bit hungry. And we can also give a compliment. We can say the flavors were delicious, or we can say the portion size was perfect, but we want to share what we were actually expecting from that dish, because we have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they wanted to meet our expectations. We have to hope that they want to meet our expectations, and that's why they're in this business of serving guests. So we need to give them a chance to do that. We need to share with them what you were expecting. And this can sound like anything from tofu. I love that you had tofu here. I was expecting it to be marinated in a sauce. At home, vegans, we don't really eat plain tofu that often. It's actually more exciting for us when it has a flavor. And we can ask, would you like me to share some more information with the chef about my favorite sauces for tofu? So if they are receptive to what you're saying and they want to know more and you feel comfortable giving them information or advice, go for it. So it's nice if we can ask for permission to give advice. We can always ask, would you like to hear more? Would you like to hear, could I send you some of my favorite recipes? We can ask for permission before we go offering advice. We don't want our advice to sound like criticism, again, because then they're going to start apologizing instead of them saying, thank you for your support. Thank you for your advice. We love to serve our guests better, and we're grateful for your feedback. So that's the response we want. We want the gratitude. We don't want them to start apologizing or being like, oh, well, it's the server's fault because they gave the wrong information. We don't want them to start blaming. That can happen. So we really want to be very open and supportive and encouraging and really cheer them on. So even if they've gone 20% of the way in serving vegan guests, like they tried, we want to cheer them on for the effort and offer, how can we help them get to that 100%? What would it look like if they were at the 100%, and paint them a picture of that so they can start to communicate that with the rest of their staff and really try to meet the expectations of vegan guests. And finally, my third tip is to know the power of a review. So if you've ever traveled as a vegan, you've probably used review websites often to figure out where to eat, whether that's Happy Cow or TripAdvisor or Yelp or Google. We're all looking at reviews all the time. And because of this, we have a lot of power in writing reviews. So we can write reviews. We can write positive reviews. We can write negative reviews. Maybe some of you have done that before. I want to share with you that the only reason you should be writing a negative review is if you don't ever want that restaurant to serve vegans again. So that is what will happen. When we write negative reviews, critical reviews, and we post them publicly, it is a deterrent for restaurants to serve vegan guests. Now, I know this probably sounds counterintuitive, right? Like I just said, we have to be honest. We have to share the real facts. But when we are sharing negativity on the internet, two things happen. Number one, all the people see it, right? So if I'm a vegan guest and I'm seeing negative reviews about this restaurant, I'm not going to go to that restaurant. So what you're doing is actually decreasing the demand for vegan options at that restaurant by deterring people from going there because they think they're going to get a bad experience. And number two, you're generating negative feelings in the people that are trying to provide an experience for the vegan guest. So we don't know why they failed at providing that experience for you. We don't know if their servers are not trained, if their chef hates vegans maybe, or their chef doesn't have the knowledge to serve vegan guests, or the manager was having a bad day. We don't know why you had a negative experience. But like I said, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And so here's what we can do instead. If they did, like I said, good enough job, didn't go 100% of the way, we can give a positive review with encouraging feedback. Positive review, which would be a 5-star review, but put some notes in your information in the comments. Don't just give 5 stars and move on. Say, we really appreciated the effort. They were so nice. We feel like the fried rice could have had more protein. We gave them feedback. We really hope they take this into account for the next customer. And give them a chance. Give them a chance so more vegans go there, try the food so they can start to see there's a reason why we need to keep upping our plant-based game. Alternatively, if you are going to give negative feedback because you don't want to have vegans going there expecting a good experience, give that feedback privately. Call the restaurant the next day and ask to speak with the manager and say, would it be all right if I share with you my experience? I was thinking about writing a review online and I thought, you know what? I don't want to put anything negative online because I really believe in you guys and I think you could do better. I thought I could just call you and share with you my experience. Would it be okay if I shared that feedback? So get that for permission, share the feedback on the phone or send an email to the manager or share with them on social media, just message them privately. Give them a chance because by the time you've written a bad review publicly, you're only doing that if you truly don't want people to go there. So let's say they lied to you and they put cow's milk in your drink and then they lied to you about it and they were angry with you and they kicked you out of their restaurant. Write a bad review. That is a place you can write a bad review. So I'm not saying never write a bad review. I'm saying for places that have potential that you want to see them grow and you want to see them change so that they can be more plant forward, then we want to be their allies and support them. And to do that, we have to start by giving them unconditional positive support, especially publicly. Bonus tip, clear communication goes a long way. So we can't assume that people are going to know because we ordered that pasta without the cheese. So they think we're vegan and they somehow understand that more vegans are coming to their restaurant. We can't make those assumptions. We need to be as clear as possible with every staff member, letting them know we want to see more vegan food there or whatever your mission is. I'm not assuming everyone here wants to see more vegan food. Maybe you're focused on the plant-based milks, but really focusing on communicating clearly and educating through your communication. So instead of simply ordering pasta without cheese and butter, give them a longer conversation. I'd like pasta. Could you make it vegan? See what they say. Do they know what that means? Then clarify. I would like no cheese on it and no butter. Also, are there any other non-vegan ingredients in this dish I should know about? Any hidden ingredients that are happening in your kitchen? Do you have any sauces that are vegan on your menu? Maybe I'm not seeing it. Which sauces are vegan that I could put? See if they understand what vegan is or whatever terminology you're using, whether it's plant-based or vegan, and really define that for them. And you can define it further. You can identify yourself as vegan or plant-based. I would say, I do not eat animals or anything that comes from an animal's body, just to make it really clear. And I also will explain if they don't understand, butter is made from cow's milk, which comes from a cow's body. I've had experiences where they've brought me bread with butter and not understood that the butter is not vegan. So you may need to really explain that and explain your values as clearly as possible so they can communicate that with the management or with the chef. Number one, so you can get a good meal. And number two, they're learning something and they're having a positive experience with a vegan or a plant-based person that is patient with them and is willing to educate them and not judge them and not get angry at them for making a mistake. So this is your chance to educate. Don't miss out on that chance. I know sometimes we just want to go out and eat and we don't feel like being the educator, being the advocate every time. It can be exhausting. So of course, protect your energy and protect yourself. But as much as possible, if you have the capacity to do this, the more information you provide, the better it's going to be for this restaurant to be able to make changes and be inspired by you. All right, this is a lot. If anyone has questions so far, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to keep going, but I'll take a look at your questions. Let's switch now from customer to campaigner or consultant. So what is the difference? The main difference between being a vegan customer and a vegan consultant is this. When a restaurant says, yes, okay, we agree with you, we would like to add more vegan options. As a customer, you go home and you hope that they follow through. And as a campaigner or as a consultant, you offer to help. So that's the main difference when you make that shift. And maybe some of you have already made that shift and you are offering to help. Maybe some of you are offering to help, but you're not quite sure how much you can help, or you're not confident in your understanding of the way restaurants work or hospitality to help them in the way that you think they need. That's how I felt in the beginning. Like I said, when that Cuban restaurant owner said to me, can you come and evaluate my menu, train my staff? I wasn't sure if I could help, but I said yes anyway. And what I realized is that I knew a lot more about the things I knew more than they did. So I knew how to cook tofu and make it taste good. And I knew how to do research on vegan recipes. And I knew how to talk to the servers about selling plant-based items effectively to vegan customers. And I knew how to label their menu. So I think a lot of you know a lot more than you probably think you do. And what we also have to remember is that whatever we don't know, we can learn and we can ask for support. We can get mentorship and we can ask questions even from the very people we're consulting for. We can ask them questions. Basically, how can I help you better? What do you need from me? So in order to do this, in order to help, number one, you need to get clear on your vision. That's really the first thing I encourage you to start with. We're going to talk in a moment about what that means. But then we also have to find a way to bring other people into our vision through our mission. So we can't just go around with our vision and expect everyone to care about that and expect everyone to know what to do about that. We need to help them figure out what is their role to play in this. How can they help bring about this vision if they share our vision? For me, when I first started this work, my vision was Aruba is the most vegan-friendly Caribbean island. So I started simply by saying Aruba could be the most vegan-friendly Caribbean island. There's so much potential. And like I just shared, I was going around to restaurants sharing the potential. Look what we could do. Look what you could do. Look what you could accomplish. And then I started saying Aruba is becoming the most vegan-friendly Caribbean island. And it's happening whether you like it or not. So why don't you join us? So seeing that potential, seeing that we are making progress. And finally, I was able to say Aruba is the most vegan-friendly Caribbean option. Look at all the options. Look around us. Now, that's not to say we don't have more work to do. We have tons more work to do. The whole world has more work to do. But I know that people can come to Aruba now and have a whole week of wonderful vegan options if they want to stay on vacation for a week. And myself, as a vegan person living on the island, I have everything at my fingertips at the supermarket. So really looking at your vision and looking at the steps to get there. What is the first step you can make? And maybe you can't call your place the most vegan-friendly place in the world yet, but is there potential there that you can latch onto and bring people into that? And how did my vision actually change things? So the vision alone isn't what changes things. It starts the conversation, but the mission is how we're going to change it. So the vision is the what am I trying to accomplish? The mission is the how am I going to accomplish that? For me, my mission has always been to make the vegan lifestyle both acceptable and accessible in Aruba. Acceptable meaning I'm going to make it cool to be vegan. I'm going to make sure that people don't roll their eyes at me in the supermarket when I ask where the tofu is. And accessible meaning that people can access it. So anyone that wants to go vegan can, and they don't feel like there's barriers in place where it's too hard for them to do that. It's too hard to get a good meal. It's too hard to socialize and go out to eat as a vegan. So that has been my mission. It's now broadened through my company, Vegan Hospitality, to make the vegan lifestyle accessible within hospitality through the whole world. But of course, I don't do that alone. So I had to bring other people into my vision. I had to bring in other stakeholders and help people figure out what is their role to play here. As a restaurant, how can I help make it accessible for people to find vegan options? I trained supermarkets to make it more accessible, to put up better signage for people to be able to find vegan options. So there's so much that you can do within your mission. It doesn't have to be mine. You're going to make your own, but really thinking through what is your vision, what is your mission, and also who else might be interested in this? Who's going to benefit from this? I teach this more extensively in my training program. Who is going to benefit from your vision, and how can they be brought into it? And also, you can get press just for your vision. So your vision alone is enough to go shout it out to the world, to get yourself in a magazine, in a local newspaper, to talk on the radio about your vision. You don't even have to have anything accomplished to be press worthy. I've seen this throughout my consultant network. Many times consultants are on the radio, in the newspaper before they even finish my training program, because it is not about what you accomplish. It's about what you want to do. It's about having a unique vision and being willing to fight for it and bring something positive to your community. So I encourage you to look around, see who's willing to listen to you, and don't wait until you feel like you've accomplished your end goal before you start sharing your progress. All right, let's get into the details now. As a campaigner or advocate, you are promoting the plant-based treaty, right? That's why you're here. So that is your how. That's your mission, or part of your mission. But we need to back up. So we can't focus only on our mission. We can't focus only on how we're accomplishing our goal, but what are you trying to accomplish? What's your vision and why? What's the value behind it? What's the why behind it? Why are you so passionate about this? So your mission as a campaigner is to get these endorsements, but I really want to break down for you the how, the what, and the why, because all of these are probably very important to you, but each of these things is not going to be equally important to the people you are trying to connect with and influence in the industry. So here's an example, using my own example. The vision is Aruba's vegan friendly. The how, which is like the mission, the method, is to make veganism accessible and acceptable, and to do that through consulting and community education. But we can't forget about the why. What's behind this? So there's going to be some sort of social justice impact or core value that you hold. That's going to be your why. There's many whys for me, but the one that I started to communicate right away was everyone who wants to dine vegan should be able to do so. And it was really easy for me to connect with people on that value. And I still use that value as a way to connect with people. Shouldn't everyone have a chance to go out to eat with their family? Doesn't everyone deserve a seat at the table? And I used to say to restaurant owners, look, when you are not offering vegan options, you're essentially forcing people to participate in murder just by eating at your restaurant. Like, do people have to be forced to do that if they don't want to do that? Shouldn't I be allowed to hold a value of nonviolence and still eat at your restaurant? People mostly agree with that, especially if there aren't a lot of vegan options in the community. They might say, well, go to the vegan restaurant. Well, what vegan restaurant? There is no vegan restaurant in my community. Where should I eat if my family's eating here tonight? Do I have to be forced to participate in this animal abuse just because I want to eat out with my family? So for me, that is a main core value. And of course, there's core values around animals, around the planet. You're going to choose what your why is and the why that you want to communicate to other people so they can be brought in on it and find that shared value. There are a lot of different reasons or social justice reasons why you would be promoting plant-based options. There's just so many, and I'm sure you all know about many of them already. Here's another example that I made up. So let's say your vision is Chicago has plant-based options at every cafe. So let's say that's your vision. How are you going to do that? So let's say as a campaigner, your mission is to get plant-based treaty endorsements to inspire change and provide educational resources, because when people endorse the treaty, they're getting resources. What's your why? What's your value? You value sustainability. You have a social justice belief in the safety of human and non-human animal survival on this planet. So these are just examples. I encourage you to sit down maybe after this training and write this out for yourself. What's your what? What's your how? What's your why? And think about how you're communicating this in your outreach efforts already, and how you can really enhance what you're doing and communicate this even better. All right, so you want to lead with your vision and values in the conversation. So you can tell people what you're doing and why. You can let them ask you how you're going to accomplish that. So you don't even need to lead with your mission. I'm here to help get endorsements for a plant-based treaty. You don't even need to lead with that. You can let people ask you. Naturally, they're going to want to know how you're going to accomplish this. So you can lead with your vision, and really the question is, what do you want to see happen in your community? And the value, why is this so important to you and your community? So ask yourself these questions so that you feel comfortable communicating this to other people. So for example, you might start by saying, I'm working toward my vision of all cafes in Chicago having plant-based options. This is so important to me because, and then share your value, because I want to do my part in creating a sustainable planet. And when I learned that plant-based dishes had the lowest emissions, I knew that I had to do something about that. I had to help make a change in my community. So you've shared a vision, you've shared a value. Most people are going to be curious to know what's next. Okay, well, that's really amazing. How can I help you? Or how are you going to do this? That's when you can introduce the plant-based treaty or introduce whatever other resources you're providing for the cafes you're approaching. So you can say, well, how am I going to do that? Well, I joined the Plant-Based Treaty Network. I have amazing resources. We have this campaign. We're getting endorsements. Do you want to know more about that? Now, if they don't ask you what your mission is, if they don't ask you how you're going to do that or how they can help you, then that is a sign for you that they need more relationship building. They need more information before you're going to ask them to do something. Because chances are, if you're going to ask them to do something that they're not really interested in, either they're going to just sign it and never actually implement anything, or they're just going to reject you right away and be like, nah, I'm not interested in that. So we want to build a relationship, make sure there's some sort of interest in your vision and values, that they have some sort of incentive to want to be part of this as well before you start introducing things that then they have to take action on. All right, so again, questions, thoughts, I'd love to hear from you all in the chat. You all are very quiet. So if you've been leading the conversations with the how, like if you've been going into cafes and being like, I'm here from Plant-Based Treaty, here's what I want you to do. Maybe that's working for some of you guys. And if it is, great, don't change that. But if you've been having a hard time getting results because of that, I want you to try this new approach and let me know how it goes. So try what I just shared. Share your vision. What do you want to see in your community? Share your core value behind that. See if there's interest in that. See if they want to continue the conversation with you. Really, for the best results, you should get buy-in from them, either on your vision or find some sort of shared value before you're going to introduce an action step, before you want to bring them in on your mission, on the how you're going to accomplish that. All right. I see Anita's writing about relationship building being a great start. Awesome. Okay, so beyond all this, of course, we can't forget the logistics. So we need to make sure we're approaching cafes at a time when they're not super busy. So don't go at 8 a.m. when everyone's getting their morning coffee. They're not going to have time to talk to you. If you're approaching a restaurant that has dinner service, go like at 5 p.m. or right when they're starting that dinner service in your community. Go when they're not super busy. You want to make sure you're setting them up for success and setting yourself up for success with these conversations. And make sure you're approaching places that seem like a good candidate. So you're approaching a churrascaria, steakhouse, be prepared for that conversation to be harder than approaching a place that already has a lot of vegetarian options. So make sure you're approaching good candidates. Again, I talk more in detail about how to find your ideal clients in my program. And make sure you're also speaking to decision makers. If you're speaking to a server, expecting them to take action, you're asking a lot of them. Maybe they don't want to compromise their job. Maybe they don't have a good relationship with their boss. Maybe they're a high school student who's busy with their work and they just don't have the bandwidth to focus on something larger than what they're already dealing with. So really ask to speak to the decision makers. And if they're not there, that's okay. Give them your number, have them call you, or ask for a time when would be best for you to come back. All right, I see in the chats, tip training moves a relationship, building from the vegan complainer again to my vegan boss. Ooh, Dennis, I want to hear more about that. I'm not exactly sure what you mean moving to my vegan boss, but it sounds interesting. All right, I see a question. What would your advice be about approaching chain cafes? Yeah, so chain cafes are a bit different as far as any chain is concerned because they're going to be taking corporate guidance and they're not going to necessarily have the ability to make changes on a individual level. So I think your first question for them would be, what do you actually have the capacity to change? Are you able to change your labeling? Maybe they don't have labels and they can add labels to their menu. Do they have power to change a certain percentage of their menu? I know from my work with corporate hotel chains, the individual hotels have a local percentage where it's like 30% of their menu they can put local cuisine. So even like McDonald's, you're going to see certain regions are going to have a local McDonald's item, but for the most part, they can't change large things. So first find out what is it that they actually have the power to change, and then work on those things. If they don't have the power to change any of those things, you need to find out who to contact at the higher level. And it could be it's a small regional chain and they'll give you the corporate leader And if it's a larger chain, like a global chain, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with that. I am in talks with a lot of global chains right now and working to help them make plant forward pledges, working to help them implement. That's really my main mission right now, is to help these places that are making pledges to actually implement them successfully and train their staff. So you're welcome to reach out to me for support. I'm sure Anita and the plant-based treaty team has support there as well, as far as making commitments. I've worked with Mercy for Animals as well. I know they also are working to get corporations to make commitments, and I have some colleagues over there I could refer you to. So yeah, my goal, right, my advice right now is really see what you can do at a local level by just simply asking them what they have the power to do. And if they say nothing, then you got to move it on to the higher decision makers. All right, I see another question. Have you seen any success remotely asking for plant-based options at businesses that may not be local or have a larger corporate entity via phone calls or emails, or in combination with asking staff locally? So I think similar question in like, how do you get corporations to change? I think it's never a bad idea to make phone calls, to email. This is, again, showing the demand is there. Just realizing that these corporate structures, there's more than one decision maker. So when you're making decisions at a large level, there are boards involved, there's leadership teams involved, there's multiple layers of presentations, there's multiple people signing off, there are budgets that need to be dealt with as well, that maybe they're planning their budget a year in advance, or maybe they have menu updates once a year, and so they wouldn't even consider doing something until the following year. So we need to just have this in mind. If we're going to be approaching corporations, it just takes longer. For example, the Mercy for Animals team that I was talking about, that I've trained, took them 2 years to get one historic restaurant to introduce a vegan menu. 2 years from start to finish. They worked with Subway, also enormous amount of time to make those kind of changes at a large scale. Not saying you shouldn't do it. I think we should all be doing that. But just having your, like I said, your own vision and your mission, where do you feel like you're going to make the best effort of your own resources and your own energy? And if it's through corporation and corporate advocacy, go for that. And if it's not, then focus on the local stuff. If you want to do more corporate advocacy, you can definitely email them. But like I said, there's a lot of people involved. And so your email will kind of get registered as, oh, another person wants this, and that's good. But it may not be the thing that's going to make the change for them. They may not respond to you right away and say, yes, we're going to make changes because you sent an email. All right, and Cindy's saying, as businesses, they need incentives, AKA more profit. How would you persuade them? Have you got interesting facts to share? All right, so that's a larger question, and I'll share a little bit about that. And then I think my next slide is going to get even more into that, on how to build these persuasive kind of relationships. But yes, so they do need incentives. What they really need is to find their own motivation for making this change, because they're not going to make it just because you told them to. I'm going to move to the next slide because, Cindy, your question is very relevant to what I'm about to share. So we need people to find their own motivation to make a change, whether it's a change in their own life or in their business. We're not going to come in and tell them to change. They have to want that for themselves. Think about it in your own life. How many times has your mother come in and told you what to do? You should date that other guy instead of that guy, right? You're not going to listen. You're going to wait until you find the reason within yourself to dump that guy and find the new one, right? So we need to really think about, how can we support people in going through a process where they can come to their own decisions? And yeah, we can provide them statistics on profit. I help them with a calculation. So what I'll do with local restaurants is I'll ask them, how many vegan or vegetarian meals are you currently serving? So let's say they're serving one per week. Maybe one vegan person is coming in per week to ask for this. And I'll explain, well, if you're going to increase your options and you're going to work to attract vegan guests, I've seen restaurants go from 1 per week to 10 per day. And those vegan guests aren't dining alone. They are dining with a partner, let's say. So you're going to get 20 new guests per day. What's the average cost of your average meal? $25. So let's multiply that. $25 times 20 people per day is, I don't know, somebody do the calculation. But the point is, that's going to be thousands of dollars, and maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on what, larger hotels, for example, that they're missing out on by not serving vegan guests and not having plant-based options for people. So by not bringing in new customers, they're actually losing a lot of money. So we can walk them through these calculations, and it might be interesting for them. But if they were interested enough, they'd do these calculations themselves. So we have to remember that this data is all easily accessible. All the sustainability data easily accessible. So if people aren't looking into it, it's because they don't have the motivation to do that. It's not because the information is so secretive. It's because they haven't found their motivation to care about it yet. And so what we can better focus our efforts on is helping them find the motivation to do that research themselves and letting them know that we're there for them to support them. And we're happy to help direct them toward resources. We're happy to help them if they do decide they want this, that we're happy to guide them through that process. All right. And Nicola is saying, I find that cafes often say plant-based is expensive, particularly when discussing not upcharging plant-based milks and drinks. Yeah, great. I'm actually going to talk about that on the next slide. All right, so we have about 13 minutes left. I want to see if I can get through. I have like 3 more slides, but let's see what we can do. So we can only find shared values when we ask questions and get to know people. Probably you're approaching people and you don't know anything about them. You don't know what their values are. You don't know if they care about what you have to say. You're just taking a gamble. So once we go in and we introduce our vision, we introduce our values, then what? What do we do next? How can we have a conversation that's going to lead to something productive where they're going to either be interested in us talking about plant-based treaty, or they're going to ask us, how can I help you, right? That's the best case scenario. So first, we introduce ourselves. We ask for permission to have a conversation with them and see if they have time to chat. And then we can use this tool called motivational interviewing. And it's a way to ask questions in a way that's going to help people find their own motivation to make a change. Now, I'm assuming many of you are already asking questions to cafe owners, chefs, if you're going out and campaigning. I'd love to know in the chat, if you're willing to share, what kind of questions are you already asking them? How are you starting these conversations? Please put those in the chat, and I'm going to keep talking and see what you all write. So motivational interviewing as a tool is actually a behavioral psychology strategy that was developed to help people who were patients of who were struggling with substance use disorders. So it was a tool developed for psychologists to support their clients in overcoming substance use disorders. And the idea being that you can't, as a therapist, just go in and be like, stop using drugs. Okay, like people aren't going to do that. So people need to have their own motivation before they're going to start taking action to stop using drugs. So I have a background as a social worker. I have a master's in social work. I was a therapist for many years. That's where this background comes in for me, and why I've adapted a lot of these tools, behavioral psychology tools, toward working with people to influence them in this kind of way to help create more vegan options. So that's a very short of it. Of course, there's a lot to talk about here, but I have a very little amount of time left. So I'm going to share with you some more information about motivational interviewing, and you can Google this if you want to. You're going to find information about it in relation with substance use disorders. Like I said before, I teach this and I mentor people in a more deeper scale in my program about this, but I want to share with you the basics. So the 4 principles of motivational interviewing are: number 1, ask open-ended questions. We want the other person to start talking. As they talk, they start to identify their own values better. They start to figure out, they've maybe never verbalized this. They've maybe never talked to anyone about their plant-based options at their cafe. So asking open-ended questions gives them a chance to tell you more information that they're going to learn more from their own speaking, and you're going to learn more about how to follow up with them and find the talking points and the shared values that you want to continue with. If we ask closed-ended questions, the conversation ends. So if we ask, are you willing to endorse the plant-based treaty? Are you willing to stop your upcharge on plant-based milks? And the answer is no. Goodbye, right? What are we going to do next? So we want to ask open-ended questions that continue the conversation. And I'm going to focus on that in a moment and share some examples. Then we want to make affirmations. So we want to, like I've said before, encourage them, support them, notice their potential. An affirmation could sound as simple as, thank you for taking the time to share that with me. That's it, right? Affirm that they have shared something valuable with you. Affirm their efforts. Oh, I'm glad that you added one plant-based option to your menu already. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. So we want to affirm what they're doing, and then use reflections to get to the deeper feelings beneath it. So for example, let's say you ask them an open-ended question like, what's stopping you from dropping the plant-based milk surcharge? And they answer, it's too expensive, right? Simply, it's too expensive. So you can affirm for them what's behind that. It's really important for you to see a profit in your business. I understand that, right? If we just take the time to affirm that we understand what they have said, we understand that the profit is what's important to them, then we can move forward with that shared understanding. Now, a reflection might sound like looking for the feeling behind it. it feels scary for you to take a risk in your business. So we might say, this cafe dropped the surcharge. This cafe hasn't done it yet. I understand that it feels scary to take a risk, especially when not a lot of cafes are willing to do that. So we want to not only affirm what's going on for them, what they value, but what's the feeling underneath it? What's the feeling that's stopping them from taking the action you want them to pursue? You might even identify other issues, like it sounds like you're overwhelmed with the idea of researching new suppliers. Maybe they shared with you it's really hard to find a plant-based milk that's affordable. It's really hard to find new suppliers. I understand that. You would feel overwhelmed. You're so busy as a cafe owner. I understand that. So really starting to connect with them. And finally, summarizing. So summarizing everything they've shared with you, all of their issues that they're facing, all the things that maybe they would do it if we could overcome the barrier of cost. Maybe I would do it. Okay, so we want to go through this process. And again, I know I'm doing it very briefly right now. You can practice it. And then ask them if they'd be open to support with this. If it sounds like they do have some issues, there are resolutions that or resources for these issues, ask, if I could help you overcome these issues, would you want to continue this conversation? And if they do, then you can then start providing them resources through the plant-based treaty or through any other resources that you have. All right, I see some more stuff in the chat. Okay, great. I'll get to that in a second. So we want to come up with open-ended questions. First and foremost, I really want to emphasize this. Open-ended questions, instead of going in and being like, do you have any vegan options? Or do you have a plant-based milk? We want to ask open-ended questions like, could you share with me what you offer to vegan guests? Or I don't see any labels on your menu. Could you walk me through your menu and explain to me what here is plant-based? As a vegan customer, what can I order? Or tell me about your plant-based options. Or why don't you offer any plant-based options? We can ask why questions as well. Find out why. Why do you charge more for plant-based milks? Let's find out why in a non-combative way. We're just simply curious. So we have to approach with curiosity. And you can even make a list of potential open-ended questions for yourself so that you can go in there with an idea of some questions that you could ask them. All right, I see a question. I find it hard to get businesses that aren't plant-based to endorse the treaty right away. It took over a year to get one plant-forward business to endorse, and my cousin worked there. Would you recommend seeing what their feelings are about options changes at a business before asking them to endorse right away? So I would. I mean, I don't know what the plant-based treaty is teaching regarding this, and I don't want to contradict anything you've learned. But personally, I would definitely build the relationship first. I would find shared values. I would express your vision and use the plant-based treaty as a tool to accomplish your mission. Plant-based treaty in itself could be your mission. Getting those endorsements could be your mission. But we share our mission when people are actually interested. So it's really hard to share with someone who doesn't care. And that's why I'm sharing these tools around asking open-ended questions so you can find some sort of shared value before you then say, look, I've got a resource for you, because it sounds like you do want to treat all your customers equally. You do want to make it easier for people to, for example, order soy milk, but you're just not quite sure how to do that. So would it be all right if I presented a resource for you? And then you can say, look, we're getting people to sign the plant-based treaty because it's the first step is making a commitment. The first step is making that commitment, is making that pledge that you care about this. And then what we're going to do is support you with the resources to make it happen. Whether or not you personally have the resources to make it happen, that's going to be up to you and your country and your situation, because I don't know. I know as a consultant, I have the resources and the knowledge to make it happen. So when I go into places, I can say, I'm willing to help you. I can train your staff. I can develop your menu. I can do all these things, help you source the products. If you don't feel comfortable saying that, of course, you're only going to be able to say what you feel comfortable actually helping them with. But I'm sure the plant-based treaty also has resources that you can then refer back to them and get some support from the plant-based treaty structure, so that if there are cafes that need help, then you can help them. And you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to help. We have consultants all over the world, like I shared, so I can always kind of help you pair with a consultant that might be able to do more deep work with that cafe. Okay. Want to have time for a role play? Maybe we can. I'm going to just go through my last slide about the consultant training. And then if we have time to do a role play where someone wants to actually volunteer to have an open-ended question discussion with a cafe owner, we're going to do that. If no one wants to volunteer, it's also fine, but we will take a couple minutes to do that. So I want to quickly share with you what I offer in the consultant training if anyone does want further training on this. It's a 12-week program with live training sessions. They're 2 hours long each. I teach everything myself. You get 3 private coaching sessions with me throughout the process to talk about your community, your vision, I do help people start businesses doing this. So many people that join the program are not just doing this as a volunteer, but they're actually starting their own consulting businesses in their community, or starting it as a side business or as a project, because they want to be able to say to these cafes, yeah, I can help you, beyond just, I want you to make this commitment. I want to help you actually see it through. You have daily communication access with me and the other cohort members via Slack. I have a lot of resources I hand out to you throughout the way. You can apply to be a certified vegan hospitality consultant as well. I also offer additional resources. Like I shared, I am a social worker, and so I've got lots of mindfulness resources. I have a whole vegan leadership course that you get access to as part of this program. And I have an alumni network. So people who come through the program, they're part of my network. We stay in touch, like I said, continue to learn from each other. It's a big mission that we have to do this work all over the world. And so you can be part of that too. My next cohort is starting November 10th. I have, I think, 3 spots left in it. And the calls are going to be from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely look at your calendar and see if that's accessible to you. All the calls are recorded, but I do encourage people to join live as much as possible. You can go to my website, veganhospitality.com, and you'll see a link, a click button tab called Become a Vegan's Consultant. If you want to take a look at that, here's my contact info. If you have any questions about it, you can always message me. I do an hour-long interview with everyone who applies. I don't just enroll you. So you can have a whole conversation with me about your personal goals and about the program, where I walk you through it before you decide whether you would want to do this. All right. You all have had great questions so far. We have a couple minutes, and I'm willing to stay on an extra couple minutes as well if anyone else is willing to. Does anyone want to volunteer to do a role play? I would need one person to volunteer to be the campaigner and one person to volunteer to be the cafe owner. And I would like you to start, the campaigner, I would like you to start by just asking an open-ended question to start the conversation around whatever your goals are with that cafe. If you want to do this, can you write it in the chat and then I can turn on your mic? I'm going to give you a second to think about it if you want to do this or not. All you have to do is start with an open-ended question and see how the cafe owner responds to it. Anyone willing to do a role play? You don't have to turn on your video, just your mic. No one wants to do it? Okay. All right. If no one wants to do a role play, that's totally fine. But what I encourage you to do is do this in your own network. So I know Nilgun does calls with you all. You probably have a team, a local team that you're working with. Do the role plays on your own. In the role play, what you want to do is start with an open-ended question, continue the conversation with open-ended questions. So if someone is going to have a closed-ended question, if someone starts to ask a yes or no question, pause the role play, see how you can reframe that question into an open-ended question, because that's really the only way to keep the conversation going with the cafe, is to keep asking open-ended questions until you can come to some sort of shared value, or they ask you, okay, now what? Like, what do we do? How can we move forward with this? All right, we have ended right on time. Does anyone have any final questions or thoughts for me? No? Okay, can you give me some feedback in the chat? How has it been for you? Have you learned something? I'd love to know your feedback before we go in a minute. Oh, good. It sounds like this was really helpful. I'm so happy. Enlightened. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Awesome. Do you think we need a leaflet to give to restaurants? That's a great question, Anita. So need is an interesting question. I mean, I think you want to think, what's the purpose of the leaflet? So what are you hoping they're going to do with the leaflet? I don't give out leaflets personally. I don't even give out business cards usually. What I do is I collect information from the people that I want to follow up with, and then I follow up with them, because I find that a lot of it just goes to the trash. Now, if there's a lot of information you need to convey to a decision maker and you're having trouble accessing the decision maker, you may want to bring a leaflet and just ask that they pass that information on, but you need some sort of call to action on the leaflet of what they're supposed to do next. So maybe what they're supposed to do next is endorse the plant-based treaty. Okay, but then what do they get out of that? How do you know when they've done it? We need some sort of next step. Like, if I'm going to give a leaflet, it's like, okay, I'll give you the leaflet, but I'm going to stop by again next week, or I'm going to call next week and just follow up and see if they had any questions about the information shared. So there's got to be some sort of follow-up depends what your goal is. Is your goal like mass, you know, you can give out 100 leaflets, or is your goal like quantity or quality? I mean, it could be both. So I think we would want to talk through the strategy a bit in more detail, depending on what your goal is with the leaflets. You have 12 calls to action in your leaflet. Yeah, then that leaflet sounds great. It sounds very impactful. If you have 12 calls to action, you can, I just think you'd want to follow up. So giving out the leaflet, making sure it's going to the right person, and following up and asking for feedback. Maybe you've already done this. Maybe you've asked for feedback from the places you've handed your leaflet to, but you haven't, do that, because then you can ask, what did you think about the leaflet? Did you have time to read it? If you did you take an action step? If not, why not? We want to know what's happening with this leaflet and if it's being effective for what it's intended to do. Okay, I see lots of great feedback. Thank you. Someone saying it would be nice to have a customer business interactive leaflet to get more feedback. Yeah, that would be interesting. So basically, I think what you're saying is to have them actually fill something out and then maybe give it back to you, or have some sort of way where customers can give feedback and say that they want more plant-based options. Yeah, I think there's so many strategies. All of you are so creative and interesting and unique, and your locations are unique as well. And so you have to figure out what works in your community. And you know, you can have experts like me on and other experts, but ultimately we're all figuring this out together. No one has the answer. We all have the answer. We have to learn together from our shared resources in order to make the biggest difference that we possibly can. So just keep sharing on the Slack where you're getting results and what's working for you, so we can keep learning from everyone. Thank you all so much for your time. And please reach out, find me on LinkedIn, email me. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Meredith. This was awesome. And we needed your expert approach. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, hopefully I'll see you all again sometime soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.